What's up, YouTube? This is your girl Megan from the HoodAstroQ. Welcome back to my channel. To all of my retaining subscribers, however, if this is your first time joining me on today, welcome. It's here that we use information from celestial bodies to help us gain a better understanding of our favorite celebrities, world events, but most importantly, our damn selves. So, with that being said, subscribe to become a part of the family, and we just gonna hop right on into it because today I am coming to y'all with yet another celebrity birth chart reading, this time on none other than the late rapper Young Dolph. And as of today, when I'm recording this, Young Dolph was gunned down earlier around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in his hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, as he went to go get some cookies. Okay, he literally went to like a bakery cookie shop and was gunned down and had his life taken away. And so, for obvious reasons, it's sad. You know, he was a father. I really liked his family, and I enjoyed that he was one of the very, very few rich, prominent black men and rappers who actually had a visibly black, like beautiful brown, dark skinned wife. I loved it. Loved the beautiful black family. So, it's just, it sucks anytime you have a situation where, a child now has no dad. You know what I mean? So that sucks. But I did think it was pretty interesting because I remember there being an attempt on his life not too long ago. And y'all drop down in the comment section and let me know if you remember this as well, because as unfortunate as today's events were, I do recall a time where I think it was either his tour bus or maybe his own personal vehicle was shot up. And I'm talking about like there was a barrage of gunfire, like something ridiculous. Like somebody may have sprayed the car like 100 times and he was only grazed and he managed to escape death. And then he ended up coming out with like I think a video or a mixtape talking about it, like a whole mixtape or album, basically taunting the people who killed him. And it was so crazy. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, this ninja is gonna get himself killed. Cause like, and I know that's like the street thing to do, you know, the popular thing to do. Once a op spin your block and then they miss, now you gotta let everybody know, like, oh, you know, I don't care. And I'm like, yeah. He's gonna get killed. And that's why I was so, I don't know, weird to experience this news today, because I was like, ooh, I hate that I spoke that out loud. Like, I hate that I said that. But yeah, we're going to discuss his natal chart as well as the transits that occurred today in terms of, what took place from an astrological perspective that led up to these events. And no, this is not me channeling his energy in any shape, way, form, or fashion. So those of y'all, because every now and then when I do readings, natal chart readings on the deceased, especially if they're newly deceased, people hop in and talk about how wrong and unethical it is. I'm not accessing this man's soul or spirit in any capacity. I'm not trying to reach over to him from the other side. We all have natal charts. There's no wrong or right time to read somebody's natal chart. It is what it is, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So, Young Dolph was born on July 27, 1985 in Chicago, Illinois, which I thought was particularly interesting considering that he is known as a Memphis rapper. He was raised in Memphis, so I'm assuming it's one of those situations where he was born in Chicago and then relocated very early on. You know, it does happen. And it does account for the fact that he actually is a Leo sun, but he's a Sagittarius moon, with his moon being conjoined to Uranus. So these are people who could have been uprooted from early on in life and relocated. Some of these people could come from either immigrant families or have families who, you know, may have like stayed all over the place, right? So this could look like a person whose family gets up and decides to move across the country, or, you know, maybe who could have come from like a broken or unstable household. So it's like, okay, well, you know, I had to, be separated, especially from the mother in some cases, like, oh, going to stay with other family members across, I don't know, the country or something like that on a different side of the coast. So either way, these are people who can have really large families that can live all over the place or move all over the place. So relocating is very common. And so, yeah, I could definitely see him, landing in Memphis, growing up there, and now he's known as a Memphis rapper, which makes sense if you spent most of your life there. So there's that. Second thing that stood out to me was the numerology of it all. Considering that he was born on the 27th, that number 27 can denote a person who may have to defend themselves a lot. These are people who constantly have to be on guard. The number 27 actually reduces to 9, which is directly ruled by Mars, and in many instances can produce a person who they themselves could be either like really hot-tempered on the offense, gun crazy, or can be on the receiving end of a lot of said behavior. These are people who could have enemies. They could be victims of gun violence. And so once again, because today's situation did not occur in a vacuum, I could totally see him, living like a really violent lifestyle. And I could definitely see how his birth number kind of plays and pours into that. It makes a lot of sense. These are people who can't really get too comfortable. And I can see where it could be really hard for him to trust other people, especially when we talk about the juxtaposition of the numbers 2 and 7. Okay, the number 2 could deal with our personal relationships, but the number 7 could deal with, deceit. It could deal with things or people not being as they appear to be, which is also very interesting considering that he does have his Venus at the 23rd degree of Gemini, forming an opposition to his Neptune. This could call into question the integrity of the people around him, friends, but it could also even speak to him living like a double life. Now, I have no doubt, when you even listen to his music and then just seeing this aspect alone, I full-heartedly believe that he has the past of being like a drug dealer or some sort, definitely. Or once again, just somebody who could live double lives. We're not even finna get off into how this could play out in regards to women. That's a different conversation for a different day, which is expected on my part when we talk about rappers. But anyway, he also has his Sagittarius moon in opposition to Chiron, which is another aspect that can really mess you up in terms of just creating a person where it's like problems follow them, if that makes sense. Especially with his Chiron being in the sign of Gemini. And so this concept of him being somebody who could be willing and dealing on the back end, or you just never really know what they got their hands in, could definitely contribute to some of the problem there. Now, this opposition could also have a lot to do with how he was raised as well, in terms of someone who could have moved a lot, relocated a lot. I also read somewhere that he was actually raised by his grandmother, which makes a lot of sense due to family being on drugs, or I think his parents were, addicts. And this is an opposition that could support that as well. A mother who was an addict, being raised by extended family members, whatever. But as it pertains to Dolph and the environment that led to today's occurrence, we also want to take a look at the fact that his Leo sun, which just so happens to be sitting at the 4th degree, is also conjoined to Mars. And this is very important to understand because these are people who could be really big names. And considering, he's also a Scorpio South node, and that Scorpio co-ruling planet of Mars, right? Having that conjunct to your Leo sun, these are people who could be really big names in the streets, people who could have a lot of notoriety. And with his sun in opposition to Jupiter there, we're talking about like even infamy. So these are people who may not always be liked. They can be walking targets. And, I also thought it was interesting that he's known for this ongoing beef between like himself and I think it's Yo Gotti. Y'all feel free to drop down in the comment section with more nuance if you care to. But, and I'm not saying Yo Gotti is responsible for this. That's not what I'm saying. But, just even the larger issue of like the industry, right? Like, pissing people off in the industry, and with Leo representing the music industry, it's just some things that make you go, okay? Because he also has the quintessential death aspect, which is Sun Square Pluto. Now, if you have Sun Square Pluto on your chart, do not freak out. This is not, a sign that you as an individual are going to drop dead, count your fucking days, bitch. It's not what I'm saying. But in addition to a bunch of other things, right? Sun Square Pluto, especially for a man, particularly for a man, can cut his lifespan pretty short. And considering that, once again, when we talk about Leo representing the industry, I mean, it's a couple of things that like kind of popped off in my head. One of the more obvious being like, okay, well, this could be the result of some street shit that he was just into, and it caught up with him. But also, like, it's very possible. I don't think y'all realize like how powerful the music industry is and how deep and shady things really go, because he was an independent artist. And so even when we talk about his Leo sun in opposition to Jupiter, he was someone who was very willful about maintaining. This could be his own publishing with that Jupiter element, right? Or his own independence, his own freedom. And it's just, you just never really know. Like, these are people who could beef with very famous people, which once again, i.e. Yo Gotti, and they could just put themselves in the line of fire for a lot of bullshit, okay? Especially with that Sun Square Pluto. Then he also has his Mars squaring Pluto as well. So lots of enemies, and unfortunately that was his downfall, right? So there's that. And then that Sun Mars conjunction could also just reinforce this concept of these people, having to always either defend themselves. I could totally see him being a victim of gun violence as well. Mars does deal with guns, firearms, all that stuff. So that was interesting. Not to mention, he also has his Mercury at the 25th degree of Leo, which can make a person, once again, really popular, especially in their hometown. Even when you think about how he died and where he died, in his own community. He has Mercury squaring Saturn and Scorpio. So him being taken out in a local bakery, quite literally, like his own hometown. That could even deal with him, like, had the attempt on his life been successful a few years back, that could have been him dying in a car as well, right? Somebody ambushing his car. But in general, he has a lot of karma tied to the streets, hence that Saturn in Scorpio, a lot of karma tied to death and things like that. So, honestly, it was only a matter of time. Then let's talk about one of the most important components of this, which would be his Scorpio South Node, which in general can make a person really, really big when it comes to underground, underhanded activity. They could be career-long criminals, especially once again with Mars conjoined to that Leo sun. And if you know anything about why Leo and Scorpio square one another just as signs, Scorpio likes to remain hidden, more covert, and Leo is very much in your face. So once again, perfect ingredient for disaster. He embodied a lot of those Leo qualities just from what I observed of him, even though I'm not too familiar with him musically, outside of a few songs. But he was very cocky, very arrogant. These are people who receive a lot of, once again, fame, recognition. Their names are known. Even when you think about Mercury in Leo, it gives very much hometown hero vibes. So it's just really sad to see his life cut short like that. He even has his son squaring his node. So, That's another thing that could play into why he would be such a big target. And just reinforcing him being somebody who could have just been very notorious and very much about everything that he rapped about. Themes such as obviously jealousy, envy, could have definitely come about. Even greed with him having that Taurus North node. So on his end, but even when it comes to the people around him, because he does have that Jupiter in Aquarius squaring his nose as well, which is another reason to kind of take a look at the people around him. Which, I mean, statistically speaking, most people who are killed by people that they know. Most people don't get killed by just complete, total, random strangers I ain't never seen of you, heard of you before, who are. So it's really interesting. Then he had his Jupiter at the 13th degree of Aquarius. That number 13 could also denote, death. That could be a number that's associated with death. And we're talking about like unexpected death, which is another way that you could look at his Jupiter squaring, especially that South node, right? Where it's like, okay, someone having like a very sudden, shocking death. But I would also even look at his Jupiter squaring his Taurus North node as, like I said, themes of like entitlement, maybe friends and other people feeling like they're entitled to his money, with it in opposition to his son, maybe entitled to his fame. So there are a lot of layers to this that I find to be very, very interesting. And then when you hop into his transits, he had a couple of transits going on that definitely reflected the energy or the outcome. He does have transiting Pluto forming a quincunx to his Mercury, which definitely can reinforce him being killed in the neighborhood. Transiting Sun was squaring his Mercury as well. So, of course, I had no doubt that this transiting Scorpio Sun, which can bring about death, right? Scorpio is the sign of death. I had no doubt that had to be somewhere in the mix. And then transiting Mars, which is also in Scorpio, was 3 days away from being conjoined or running directly on top of his South node. So, there's that. And that could have definitely played a role in activating a lot of that Scorpio South node energy, because it's worth mentioning a lot of Scorpio South nodes can experience premature death. That Scorpio South node is no joke. Now, once again, if you are a Scorpio South node watching this, having your South node in Scorpio isolated, like alone, is not necessarily a condemnation of pack your bags, bitch, you about to be out of here. Even though technically you can't pack your bags. Like, we all die and you can't take anything with you. But you get what I'm saying. He also had a death-inducing transit of his natal Pluto, right, at the 1st degree of Scorpio, forming a quincunx to the current transiting nodes. So, yeah. And, I mean, with the transiting North node being in Gemini, having his Pluto quincunx to that Gemini can cause someone to, like, be taken up out of here. At a store, like I said, in the car, in their community, in their neighborhood, maybe while they're going for a walk, while they're involved in their day-to-day activity, it's over with. And I thought it was also interesting that he did have, the transiting moon, which of course is currently in Taurus, forming a semi-square to his Venus, his natal Venus in Gemini, which could have been one of the motivating factors for him to even go to the bakery in the first place, where he just had like a taste, like, damn, I want some of them cookies. Like, I got a taste for it. Like, I have an oral fixation for those specific cookies. I need to go to get them. And the thing that I noticed with a lot of fallen Leos, I even think about like King Von, who died around Scorpio season, and he actually had the inverted placement in terms of his lunar node. So he had Scorpio on the North node as opposed to the South node, which in many respects can produce a similar outcome for some people. I noticed that these are people who are very prideful, once again, in very much like Leo fashion. And they always say that pride comes before the fall, So doing things, moving in ways in which, like, especially as somebody who's had an attempt on your life before, you are not safe out here. But as a Leo, especially as a Leo man, you know, a man with your Leo sun conjoined to Mars, these are men who don't really, like, they don't care. You know, they're too proud to be cowards. They're not gonna not do whatever it is that they want to do. They're very willful. And even though, you know, of course, King Von's situation was different, but it still was the same in the event that he ended up doing something kind of foolish and lost his life because of it. You know, Leo is a sign of risk. So taking these crazy ass risks, and even though he was, you know, Dolph was just doing something as simple as getting some cookies, you're in your hometown where, you know, it's a lot of spice, it's a lot of venom. You know, you're a type of guy where you attract a certain type of people. You're in a certain type of game. You have a certain type of past. Anything could happen when you're just by yourself, no security, no nothing. King Von, on the other hand, is walking up to, you know, niggas fighting, not knowing, you know, not being aware of who's around and what the next person has. So, you know, I understand there are obvious differences, but I just could not help but to reflect on some of those similarities. A lot of Leo men are very, very prideful. And in some cases, it can come with dire consequences. And so this is not me saying that he deserved to die, in no shape, way, form, or fashion. I would never wish that on anyone. It's just sad. Also, transiting Mars is squaring his Jupiter in Aquarius. So once again, it definitely echoes the theme of him having Jupiter in Aquarius himself, and having it square his nose, in the sense of, you know, a shocking death, an untimely death, you know, sudden occurrences, life-altering changes taking place at once. So yeah, on that note, I'll go ahead and end the video here. Y'all drop down in the comment section and let me know if you were a Dolph fan. How do you feel about this situation? I mean, it's really sad. So, I mean, there is that. But feel free to share your memories of him and all that good stuff. And yeah, make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And I'll holler at y'all in the next video. Bye.